Alright everybody, so this is going to be the unit where you get to learn black and white photography, and this is a unit that a lot of students really get excited about, and I really like teaching it. Now, just before we start, I have to cover that we're not going to be able to cover everything that has to do with black and white photography. It's just too expansive, but we're going to give you a great starting point, and hopefully you can use these techniques and get out there and start to kind of sharpen your skills when it comes to black and white. Now, we're going to be covering our learning objectives in two separate tutorials before we get to the challenge. This tutorial we'll be covering the black and white basics, going over some vocabulary, and talking about 3 design elements or elements of design that will help you achieve this type of format. So let's get started. Now, to kick off this unit, we need to talk about the elements of design that best help us achieve this type of photography. Now, there are 8 elements of design, but there are 3 in particular that really speak to black and white images. And they're going to be contrast, texture, and shape. So of these 3 elements of design, we are going to kick it off with shape. Now, when you think about shape, it's very easy just to consider all the shapes that you learned about in grade school. There are circles and triangles and rectangles and all the other shapes. Now, it doesn't have to be a hard shape, maybe a geometric shape. It can just be a simple form. As long as it is something that you can isolate in your frame, you'll find that form's pretty easy to identify. Now, this is especially important where screens tend to have a lot of a busy background, maybe moving objects, or if there's just a lot of different subjects to choose from. To better explain this, I'm going to give you a scenario where shape might be important. Let's say, for instance, you go out to try to shoot some wildlife, maybe some geese in a pond or a park. If you shoot this flock of geese from a vantage point that's far away, and you just go ahead and capture the whole field, you will find that your image will be somewhat flat, disinteresting, kind of busy with all the geese, and lacking a certain emphasis. However, if you use your lens and you focus in looking for shape, you will find that there's a triangle shape to the body of the geese and the head of the geese, and this will make it much more interesting to the viewer because the emphasis in the image is clear, and this is especially important in black and white format. The second element we need to talk about when it comes to black and white photography is contrast. Now, contrast is simply the intensity of light that affects the shadows on your subject. Now, this is really important because black and white images rely on contrast. So sharp, dark, and light make black and white photography very interesting to look at. By including both of the elements, shape and contrast, together in your black and white photos, you will find that your subject punches out at you. Now, the third element that we need to cover for black and white is going to be texture. Now, texture is not as important as shape or contrast. However, the reason we want to include texture is because when we're looking for textures, we're really focusing on the details. And details have, a certain punch. And what this will do is it'll make your black and white photography just that much more appealing. One of the textures that I believe is really interesting in black and white photography is anything that looks weathered or roughed. Something like old bricks or maybe chipped paint on the side of an old building. But it just depends on personal preference. You'll see that when you focus on things like texture, again, it'll make you focus on the details. And details have a certain appeal in black and white photography that it just doesn't have in color photography. Alright, you guys, that's going to wrap up our intro on black and white photography. I kept it short on purpose. I want to make sure that we focus on our 3 elements of design when we talk about black and white photography. Now, in the worksheet below, it's a little bit different. I'm going to be showing you images that seem to lack one of these elements. You'll see pictures that lack texture, or maybe they'll lack contrast, maybe lack shape. I'd like you to identify what the image lacks, and that way you can sort of piece together how important each of these elements are in black and white photography. I hope this helps you get started, guys. Please rewatch the video if you need to, and in the next video we will be covering history of black and white photography and the emotive qualities that can be associated with black and white photography. So I will see you then.